I want to say um, thank you to all of you for joining us, and particularly to those of you who are joining while you are traveling or on vacation, even or far overseas in at least one case. So I know that this is a tough time of year to get this started, but Rohit really wanted us to try to have a meeting as soon as possible. So, myself, I am just back from vacation this morning, and I'm glad we can pull this off. And I hope you will bear with me. I am new to the process of town committees in Somerset, and although I guess not completely since I was a member of the tennis committee, but I'm excited to do this, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you. We did have an agenda as it was posted by Justin yesterday. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
It didn't really reflect the subheadings, but we were going to start just by going around and having people introduce themselves and say a little bit about what they think they can bring to the committee or any particular interests that they have that they would like to pursue in the committee. I will start. My name is Mary Bartendock, and I am living on Fallstone with my husband, Alan, who used to be on the Environment Committee. Um, my background, as far as this committee is concerned, is really 30 years working on environment programs and projects and policy with the World Bank. Um, I kind of moved around a lot. We moved around a lot, but I focused on Africa in terms of region and was responsible for all of the agriculture and environment programs in Western Africa for many years, and then became the global director for environment and climate change for a few years at the bank. Um, I I fully own that I know a lot less about local government, and so I'm on a learning curve. But I also know less about the background of these two committees, which are now merged, and I'm counting on several of you who have been on one or both of those committees to help us out with that. Um, and I'm going to stop there because I don't want to drag on too long. And is I guess we can go down the line as I see it on my screen. Anjali, that puts you next.
Well, thanks very much. I feel privileged to be a member of the committee. I did try at first to at least be a spectator on parks and natural resources, and then I was an informal helper on the environment committee. I think they have this thing about, the turnover of these committees not being terribly uh, periodic. I think they're supposed to be every 2 years, but in fact they weren't. So, but I was happy to help or spectate in an informal capacity because I think there's so many things that are important. And all I can say is that what I bring to the committee is a lot of concern and feeling for these aspects of the town. I am particularly interested in the plantings that are around the town, and this includes the trees. And I'm also interested in tree management and tree safety because I've known a few trees to topple quite disastrously. I'm also interested in invasive species as well, the town arborist and so on know because there has been quite an influx of invasive species in the northern part of the town, which are quite deadly with their trees. And I've talked to people like Sarah Morse, who's very keen on wetland management and the creek and so on. And she just says these are really two big issues in terms of the sheer size of what you'd have to do to take them on. I'm thinking particularly of ailanthus trees. And so I am interested in where the town goes and all this, and I'd like to help.
Thanks, Anjali. Okay, Jeffrey, would you like to go next?
Sure, thanks, Mary. My name is Jeff Lape. I have the wonderful pleasure of being a town resident for 30 years on Dorset, immediately backing up to our park. So every day we get to experience what an amazing oasis it represents by virtue of barred owls, deer, fox, and all the other birds and the like that really make this space pretty unique. I've spent my entire career in the environmental field, water resources mainly. Um, Spent the last 30 years at EPA, serving, for example, as director of the Chesapeake Bay program. So when it comes to our park, I'm particularly passionate about not only um, looking for ways to enhance its effectiveness as a natural forest, but also for improving the riparian zone along our stream and share Sarah's concern about ongoing water quality issues that really do expose our kids and pets to some real concerns. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Mike, you're next.
Mike Carriasso, been in town for just about 5 years. Currently joining from Seoul, South Korea. My wife, Nicole, who some of you may know, is from there. We're visiting family. We are on Uppingham Street, about 4 days away from Marnie Shaw. And on the parkland side, I have no back fence. I am exposed to the deer and everything else walking in and love that very much. My professional background is as a computer programmer with an emphasis on DNA. I have worked in the Netherlands for a Dutch agricultural biotech company for many years, and I'm a co-author on the tomato genome and generally have some exposure to the scientific side of this.
Thanks, Mike. Kelly, would you like to go next?
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Swain. I live on Trent Street. I've lived in town now for over 10 years, maybe about 12 years. I was formerly on the PNRC committee. I'm an art historian by background. I am currently touring a photography exhibition by the Native American photographer Cara Romero, who focuses on, among other things, environmental racism. So very interesting photographer. And I'm also interested in plantings around the town, our wooded area, the water quality of our stream, and also the pathway leading into our forest and out of our forest and how that blends into our town and how we access it and the safety of that accessibility. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. David, you're next.
Hi, David Cathan. I live on Dorset, and I beat Jeff on tenure. We moved in '89, so as a longtime resident. And my background is I've have been working all my career basically on energy, and specifically on clean energy areas. Worked in consulting and then retired from FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, after 20 years. And there I was their demand response and distributed energy resource expert. Since retirement, I have been doing a lot of volunteering, actually. And one of the areas I'm volunteering is I'm working with the Sierra Club, both at Maryland and at the national level, on issues having to do with clean energy and data centers and things like that. I have been a past member of the Environment Committee. I served 2 terms and actually was chair for the last couple of years and was termed off. And Rohit had to bend my arm backwards to get me to sign up again, but I'm happy to. And then also have some other local. I was on the I'm sorry, on the Climate, Energy, and Air Quality Advisory Committee at Montgomery County for a number of years. So very interested in local energy and environment issues. And as far as issues associated on the town on the agenda and what people are talking about, totally in agreement with need to do something better with the park. I'd love to have a much more pollinator rich environment there as opposed to all the grass that's especially in the park, the walk that comes in from Wisconsin. And very interested in dealing with the invasive plants, water quality, major issue. But the main thing I want to do is I want to make sure that the town, our committee is, reflects its name in that we don't not look at environment, and energy issues, and want to make sure that keeps on our agenda. So that's it for me.
That's great. Thank you. Joe?
Hi, everybody. My name is Joe Albert. I live on Cumberland towards the bottom of the hill. Have been here a couple years less than David, so has been here since 1991. Um, and amazingly, I have never served on a committee. I have volunteered, thanks to Patty Friedman and Sarah Morris, to take a lot of ivy off trees and do things like that, but I've never served. And I'm looking forward to it and listening to the bios of the people on the committee. People are bringing some really interesting skills and backgrounds to this. So I think it'll be really a lot of fun. What I bring, I, like Mary, worked at the World Bank for quite a while, the last 20 years of it working on environment issues, um, particularly on biodiversity and on climate change issues. So have some experience. And if I bring anything, it's that I have read an awful lot of management plans in my day. So was looking at this one in terms of how does it compare to Chile's environment plan? Um, Management plans. It's so that's something that I can bring. The thing that I think that probably interests me the most is I realize just how really important the parkland is in this town. I hadn't realized until looking at these maps really carefully just how far it extended. I mean, you know that it sort of goes, but 17 acres going, and this very long um, tract is pretty impressive. And given what's going on in Geico with the Geico development, I think maintaining that parkland and optimizing it is really going to be critical for us. I mean, especially especially if they in fact do tear down as many trees as they're saying that they're going to. Um, so I think that's one of the things that interests me probably the most.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Patty?
Hi, I'm calling in from the Adirondacks where I live 4 months out of the year. And I live on Grantham. I've lived there over 30 years. I was a pediatric geneticist in my former life, long retired, and I've have been past chair and committee member of PNRC for decades. Um, and so I probably provide the historic background that you might need if you ever have questions. We have done a previous forest management plan years and years ago. I am a master naturalist by training. I'm a Montgomery County certified weed warrior. I was the person who used to do the ivy poles and cutting ivy from around trees, and I've gotten so that I don't do that much anymore. Other than individually, I don't organize groups, and it needs to be done on a regular basis, and I've been trying to get the town to take some of it on. My interest also is in maintaining canopy trees in the town, because when the Pepco ceased to plant canopy trees where there's electric lines, we're really going to lose that sense of a tree city unless we really are careful about the canopies. We've switched from a monoculture when I first started to, planting a diversity of trees, and really hopeful that we'll focus, in addition to the parkland, which I care a lot about, on the town trees and the town gardens. So planting native trees, native plants, pollinator plants.
Okay, great. Thanks, Patty. Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren Rubenstein. I'm Mary's neighbor on Surrey Street, I think 28 years at this point. Um, I have master gardening training. I can no longer call myself a master gardener because I did the volunteer service hours for a number of years and then had to give it up in favor of my paid work, which is as a psychologist. But I am an avid, passionate gardener, and I think my interests are invasives. I'm thrilled to see that English ivy can no longer be sold in Maryland. I'd like to see it completely gone from the town. And I'm also interested in mosquito control as the only home of our immediate neighbors who do not have a screen porch. I spend a lot of time getting bitten by the mosquitoes and it feels out of control. So I'm interested in learning a little bit more about that.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. And Robin, as our liaison, I think maybe you should introduce yourself as well.
Okay, I am Robin Barr. This is my 7th year on council. Prior to being on council, I was chair of the Environment Committee. While being on council, I've been liaison both to PNRC and to the Environment Committee, so I've learned it from both sides, shall we say. Been in town since 1995.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us. I'm just realizing that we have 100% attendance, which is pretty outstanding. Let me just ask, everybody knows Justin. Justin, you want to say hi quickly?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Justin, I'm the deputy town manager. I work as like the staff liaison to all the committees. So I'll be at all the meetings. I set up the Zooms. And then if you have any questions about count or committee related things, you can reach out to me, kind of like the point of contact with the staff. But yeah, excited to kind of get to work with everyone. And yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thanks to all the committee members who got wrangled back into this work by Rohit and by me, and also really to all of you for volunteering your time and energy for something I think we all feel is important. And I'm really pleased that we have such a diverse and qualified crew to work with. I think today I was gonna just say a couple of things in opening about sort of the logistics. Rohit had suggested that the committee should meet every 2 months. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Um, and I don't know if people are content to be meeting by Zoom. I think most of the committees are meeting by Zoom, particularly with the sort of requirements of recording the meetings. It seems to facilitate things fairly easily. But I just wanted to check with you how you felt about the periodicity and the setup for the meetings before we continue. Any comments or concerns?
I just want to say on the periodicity that it might depend on whether we have any particular subject matter that crops up which needs a lot of attention, because I think 2 months is a good interval to check in. If there's something really important that's being debated or where action is needed, and some of this is seasonal work, so there may be a part of the year when one or the other issue comes up, then it may need to be focused on.
I agree. We can keep it flexible, but in general, we'll shoot for every 2 months. If we need to meet more often, fine. If it seems like we don't have enough material to meet every 2 months, that's also fine.
I don't have a problem with every 2 months, but it seems like quarterly is sufficient, at least once every 3 months. But I don't have a strong opinion. And as far as I actually would love to get together at some time in person,
Yeah.
but I totally agree and understand and ran most of the environment committees by Zoom. So it's totally what people expect to do nowadays.
One possibility is, I mean, I'm fine with quarterly meetings. I don't know what you guys think. I know we need to meet at the beginning of the year in consultation with the budget cycle, but other than that, it's really up to us.
So Mary, I'd offer, I heard a lot of topics. The park, energy, environment, trees, canopy, invasives, climate. I think to get a fast start, we ought to at least focus on developing a thematic action plan. And then and get a quick start, figure out what we want to try to accomplish by when. I worry that if we just meet quarterly, frankly, I'm not sure we're going to have an impact on the things that are happening. For example, in our parkland, we still have sometimes the town and individual landowners mowing within the woods. And to the extent we want to get ahead of that, have a vision for our parkland, get some feedback from the town as to what they think we should be doing with our parkland, then we might need to front end some of our activity a little bit.
Okay. Another possibility, particularly on sort of covering the areas that we want to cover, is to informally set up subgroups. We're not supposed to have formal subcommittees, but I think it would be fine if we sort of divvied up the work a little bit. And we can discuss how we want to do that. I I don't know. I think that to start with, we might want to see what's on the agenda. I chose some topics today and got a little bit of feedback, but um, the one which came from the council was the discussion on Vinton Park, which I'll get to in a minute. Before we go there, there is one other issue on the meeting, or rather, sort of how we're working together. Does anybody else have the certification or the training from the Open Meetings Act?
I do, in the sense I had to take that training in order to be on the Montgomery County committee. So it's been
Great.
a few years, but I took the training.
Okay, perfect. Then you know from the training that we needed me plus one who have had it. So, so we've met that qualification. If issues come up related to the Open Meetings Act, I'm sure we can work it out. And Justin will also help us with that. Um, all right, so let's get to the first substantive issue on the agenda, which was the discussion around Vinton Park, which is the forested area, which if you looked at the background management plan from many years ago, I think it was
2013.
20, sorry,
2013.
2013.
2013. You saw that the layout of it, and the question now is, do we need a new management plan? I think the mayor has asked us to look at whether we should do that and to make a recommendation to the council. And if we think we do, then, we can discuss how that process should go. So I've heard a lot of comments so far about sort of the path we take to rewild it or to manage it in different ways. So let's open up the discussion around that for a second.
I'm coming up and not being on the PNRC and not really been tracking up. So what is the management plan? Right? Is there a summary of the current one?
I mean, I don't think that they have been implementing that plan for some years. So I think the first question is no, there's no current management plan.
I think one of the interesting things would be to take the management plan and update it. I mean, the kind of information about what the tree canopy looked like, the kind of soils and that kind of thing, that doesn't have to be redone. What should be redone is an update on all that work that Sarah and Patty did over the years on getting the ivy off the trees, which was a major point in this vet management plan, major problem that they identified. I think taking it not necessarily section by section, because I'm not sure we need to do, as I said, the soil stuff, but where are we? Has there been a market decrease in the canopy? Is there a completely different makeup of the trees? But more importantly, were the recommendations that they came up with in 2013 implemented? And I think there has been a fairly significant effort by as Patty said, is by her and other people, and carried on by Sarah, to improve to work against the objectives of the management plan. So an update would be a good start, and it doesn't have to be very complicated.
I have just one question. I'm sorry to ask me, they're talking probably too much. Was the WSSC work done before or after that last management plan on the Vinton Park?
That's a really good question. I assume it was after.
It was.
It was after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So then that's clearly an area that needs
Yeah.
to be, reflected.
Mary, I think also a question for this committee to try to represent is what's our vision for the park? You can develop a management plan, but you have to ask the question, to what end? And if you want an example, take a look at what Somerset House is doing. And they have a clear objective in mind, and rewilding and maintaining a natural forest is not their objective. They're turning their forest into an urban garden, my characterization. So a management plan needs to begin with what are we trying to achieve with it? Return it to its natural condition as much as possible, or something else?
Okay, that's a good point. Let's I've heard so far that people are much more interested in returning it to its natural condition, to sort of having the pollinators there, getting rid of some of the invasive plants, and rewilding it to a certain extent.
But the rewilding is, that grove of trees that was there, near Dorset and Wisconsin, that was basically just a mass of, of trees. Many of them were specimen, but it was a hell of a lot of invasives. Is that the rewilding we're talking about, or are we talking about something a little bit more, a mix of a wild plus a definite action to increase pollinators, which includes some planting and some maintenance of that?
It actually appeared to me as if there might be a little bit of a combination of both the rewilding and the urban garden concepts, and they both going side by side. If you take a look at the area you were just talking about, which is off of Wisconsin, there is an amazing number of new native trees that have been planted there over the last year. And yet at the same time, there's an effort to build a mulch path which leads to somewhere. I haven't followed the end of it. And so maybe that's where the garden bit comes in, but I don't know whether the garden bit should have certain limits placed on it with concepts like, not permitting grass cutting and so on. Also, in terms of the urban garden aspect of it, one thing I've been struck by every time I've tried to take the path that runs, off of the parking lot and the path that runs off of the swimming pool, is that it's actually very difficult to negotiate because it crosses a creek, and that creek is pretty wobbly, and not everybody could easily cross it. So you say that if this urban garden concept is important, then somebody needs to make that a little bit more navigable for the average slightly older resident of this town. Maybe a little wood bridge or maybe more footstones or I don't know what, but there needs to be a rebalancing of that. And then the other thing is, if you read the 2013 report, which I glanced through with interest, it talks a lot about the changing variety of species in Vinton Park and how the species which were observed and carefully cataloged in 2013 are likely to be crowded out and replaced by other species. And it made particular reference to the fact that some of the plants that were there, which were very, very good berry food, and I'm not talking about the pollinators, I'm talking about the bird food. And it said that a lot of these are in danger of disappearing and being replaced by other kinds of things which do bear berries, but which don't attract quite as many birds, and some of which are actually toxic. I think that it would be good to have a revisit of that plan, as many people have pointed out, to see whether some of the concerns which were raised in the earlier plan are in fact, whether they've happened or not, and what direction they're heading in. And we need to come back to the town with some kind of proposal as to where we want to go.
Thanks, Anjali. I'm going to keep taking comments. So others who would like to come in on this? Anybody?
I'd just like to say that the Somerset House, I disagree with Jeff Lape. They did do a more urban garden area close to their house, but they're very interested in having a forestry plan for their woodlands, and they're quite sophisticated in terms of what they're wanting to do, despite it looking like a garden near where the Somerset House is, because it's really nice for the people in the Somerset House to have a place that they can walk in, and they've planted daffodils and all kinds of things in addition to native plants, but it's a lot of native plants. And the people that are doing that aren't, I mean, they're serious people that want to do the right thing in that park, and they would like to work with us. So I think it's important that we are all in touch with them as we develop whatever plan we're going to do.
And can I just say a few moments about that, by the way, Sarah has been working with, Somerset House and, especially about removal of the invasives. So they had major work to do that. That whole spot where they have turned into it would be called urban garden was just totally overrun. So, and the other thing is, I don't know if people know that the actual part of the trail that comes directly off of Wisconsin, that there's a little slice of that which is actually Somerset House land. Somerset does not own, the park does not go all the way to the sidewalk, at Wisconsin.
I see.
Interesting.
Mary,
Okay.
I'd like to just add a couple things.
Okay.
One, I think it would be very helpful if this committee actually convened in the park to see some of this stuff. So I I will disagree with Patty. I think what Somerset House has done from a natural forest standpoint is far more harm than good. And a couple quick examples. In their quest to take out invasive species, they have obliterated the riparian zone of the stream completely. So if we were to go out there, you will see the stumps of honeysuckle that used to hold the bank in place and provide important shade for the stream. That is all gone. Second, just as an example of their work, and I agree with Dave, there were a lot of invasives in there, but they have taken out so much of the understory. Have you noticed they now have to have sprinklers to water the area? You shouldn't have to water a natural forest. It's just, sorry, not natural. But by taking out the understory and the ground cover, they're drying out the forest. Third quick point, they have mowed the entire property line in large swaths. Again, in a forest, I don't think we want to be advocating widespread mowing, particularly up to the stream edge. Again, I think if this committee could convene on site, walk the park, we could have these conversations in very tangible, factual ways.
I'd like
I
to
will-
second what Jeff said. I think, conceptualizing a forest management plan really needs to start in situ. And we should be out there and having discussions and talking about what we observe. And I think that's an important first step. So I would heartily endorse having a walking meeting through Vinton Park.
Okay, that sounds like a concrete proposal. I'm just gonna make sure everybody's had a chance to speak and then I'll come back to that. Anybody else who would like to comment on this?
Just because I haven't heard them mentioned otherwise, I'm adjacent to a section with quite a chunk of bamboo. I didn't see bamboo mentioned in any of the prior materials, and I'm not sure how long in the Vinton Park area that's been development, but I think it should be on the radar. And then I also see quite a bit of stream erosion in the section between Trent Street and the Somerset Pool, and I want to make sure that that's also on our radar.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Last call. Okay, I have a couple of suggestions. One is I fully endorse the idea of a walking meeting, so I will, unless I hear any objections, try to set that up. I think I will do it for the beginning of September when I think most people are back. And I'll try to suggest some dates very soon so that people can try to attend. If you think, do you think do we have the expertise among us to do that as a group, or do we need to, maybe we can ask our Dr. Feather to come in and join us, but is there anybody else who we should be asking?
I think a couple of points prior to having a group gathering at Vinton Park would be first to have a conversation with the town hall about whether they do envision something so that we know what to target. And the second thing would be to have an agenda for that walkthrough meeting so that we know how to use our time to cover a certain number of ideas. And once we've
Okay,
got
I think
those two,
we can do that, but they're asking for the town hall, the mayor is asking for our proposals, so I think
okay,
they would like us to
be more
make
freeform.
recommendations to the council.
Okay. How about inviting somebody like this person, Brian Knox, the sustainable resource management person who wrote the report? Or someone like that.
Um, Well, if we can get, that was 2013, but I guess we could try that.
Or somebody similar in qualification.
Mary, another option is we might be able to reach out to the Maryland Department of Natural Resources and have a true forest manager
Yes.
who would be independent and expert, because I think there are lots of great views and perspectives of folks within the town. But my sense is we need a neutral expert who is not perhaps bound in the history that many of us are in the town.
I would suggest Montgomery Parks. You know, someone, one of their forests, they maintain a lot of forests. Some Montgomery Parks might another place if it isn't the Maryland department.
Okay, great. All right, those are helpful. And then I wanted to circle back to the idea of having a vision before or after or as part of revising updating the management plan. One possibility would be we do this walkthrough, we come up with our ideas about or our vision of what we think we would like to recommend to the council. And then, as a part of that, we can suggest that it's time to update the management plan. The other possibility is to include as part of the terms of reference for the management plan that they give us options on different ways to go. But I think it might be better for us to do that up front.
Can I just ask if any of this will be resourced? A management plan might require a certain amount of input, both in terms of, management of the current trees, planting of new trees, clearing out or preservation of some areas. And is there likelihood of any money for this? Because if there isn't, we need to tailor whatever we do to that.
My understanding, and I again would ask on people who have more experience with this than I do, but I have a feeling that there is a budget for the management of that area. And also we can, include that in our annual request. But it should be part of any revised management plan that the maintenance costs be outlined.
Because I think that's important.
Okay. If there are any other comments, now's the time. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. And just to sum up, we will try to set a walking meeting for sometime in the first half of September. And we'll try to get Dr. Feather and also either someone from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources or Montgomery Parks to help us.
I think we should be careful to choose a person who actually has a forestry background, because an awful lot of the people in Maryland parks are really people who are planning strips around Little Falls Parkway or managing some little urban parkland like the one that borders on Western Avenue. And we want somebody who's used to a wilderness like what we have in Vinton Park.
Can I ask, when we talk about Vinton Park, are we talking the whole stretch all the way down the creek? To closer to River Road and past the pool? Is that the whole extent of Vinton Park? I never can understand that, because there's some issues down below the pool that we need to probably look at too.
That was the focus of the old forest management plan, the whole strip.
The whole
Okay.
street.
but
So
it's but
I
the
hope people know
property.
that the space immediately behind the Irene, that's Somerset land on that side of the creek. So that's basically been nothing there. That's like, it's basically a kind of almost a wasteland. It's just nothing. It's not very pretty. It's not very, so just an area we might want to think about.
Okay, thanks.
There's-
All right. Okay, moving on. So I don't want to keep you guys any longer than I have to. All right, this is, I realize this is a a big topic, but the other issue which came up when I was talking both to people who were joining the committee and to the mayor was what should we have a policy that is different from what we have on invasive plants? And it may be something that we don't want to resolve tonight, but I just thought I would put it on the agenda to sort of hear people's perspective on it. Um, there are a lot of you and others in town who have done more work on this than I have. Um, I know there are different levels of invasiveness. Uh, and I don't know if you think as part of this committee, we should try to recommend to the council that they set uh, more regulations or at least provide more information to the town.
Does the existing policy involve just invasives or any policy? Just invasives or a pro policy of just planting natives?
I should say something here, if it's all right. This arose out of we're revising our actual building policy for new construction, and part of a new construction is a landscaping plan. And so the question was, what do we say about the landscaping plan? And invasives came up. And I pointed out at the time that things were changing on invasives and the law was just changing. And the feeling then was, well, send it to PNRC or PNRE as it now is, and let them tell us what we should put in that section. That's how it arose.
Thanks, Robin. That's helpful.
So help me understand. So it is the policy we're talking about is about on people's own property.
Yeah, it's landscaping plants on new homes.
So this is not about what's, removing the invasives from the parkland.
Right.
Okay.
So I'd like to have us think a little bit about expanding that. And as Robin has said, this area is changing very rapidly. I mean, there are some debates, like in fact, the 2 points which were raised by Jeff Lape about the cutting down of the honeysuckles. I think there are other people who would argue that honeysuckles are one of the prime invasives. I don't have a strong view on that, and I know that people like Sarah are actually putting in a lot of effort on that, and I don't know how quite it's being managed. I've been looking at invasive trees because I think people have found them to be too expensive for intervention. And they've come in only very recently, as you say. It's only been in the last 6 to 7 years that there's been this amazing sweep down the east coast of the Islanthus. And it's horrible because it also attracts the spotted lanternfly, which then, drips poop all over the garden and it multiplies like absolute crazy. So far, it's only in the northern end of town as far as I've seen. And I'd like to view people like, Patty and so on that. But for instance, I believe, I'm going to some efforts to try to get one of these removed near my home. But I think there are a number of people in the town who have these trees which are kind of self-planted but which are far too expensive for them to remove. And should the town help them in some way? I know the town actually did try to remove or has made efforts to remove some of them on the Somerset School premises, but also immediately adjacent to the Somerset School premise is a house in Cumberland, which has these sprouting away happily. And then you say, well, what use is this going to be? Because they all come right back. And so I mean, so far it's not in the southern part of the town, as far as I know, although we should take more careful stock of that. And it's because they also bring in so many highly undesirable insects and because, you have uh, Pennsylvania and Maryland and so many East Coast states have now written about the need to control these and manage these and how it needs to be done. So I hope we can think a bit about that.
Okay, other comments? All right.
Actually, I want to get back to a comment. By the way, I am a certified weed warrior supervisor, from Montgomery County. And so I am actually well trained in the invasive species. And I think that we should be working in the parks to remove them as much as possible. I understand what Jeff is saying about the buffers. But I do think that, the more we keep them from being in the parks, less they will show up in people's houses.
Some of
If
them
I
are in
may,
people's
Mary,
houses.
just to build on Dave's point, what I'm advocating, and it's a growing view that when addressing non-native species, which sadly have become a part of our worldly environment, there's no escaping them. A more nuanced assessment of risk and benefit of keeping and removing has to be applied. So, for example, when you look at the history of honeysuckle, in the 1800s, it was imported, at least in the literature, for one particular reason, to stabilize stream banks, to actually, because it was fast growing, dense root structure, provided canopy over the stream. That was the reason it was used. I'm not opposed to taking it out, but what's happened in our little stretch of the creek up by Wisconsin Avenue, it has been completely eliminated, thus exposing the stream to more erosion, more sunlight, more heat, and nothing planted in its place. And what we need is I submit to this committee, a more nuanced approach where you are looking at invasives, asking what the harm is that they're causing. And if you have a plan to remove them, you have a plan to replace them with natives. And that just becomes a little bit more of a mental framework to say, let's not just indiscriminately say, oh, it's honeysuckle, it's bad, remove it.
The weed warriors wouldn't do that, Jeff. The way it's taught is not to remove them from the banks, but
Right.
there's so much to be
But they
removed.
did, Patty. You and I both seen it.
But that's history. What we're talking about is getting rid of invasive species that are surrounding our trees, that are killing our trees. There are so many invasive species in our woods. You're focusing on, a past events. I think that for us, we need to focus on how do we get
Well,
rid of the invasives that are there.
history is a bit of a telling of the future. Let's just not repeat it. But Patty, a lot of people defended the action to remove all of those honeysuckles. And again, we'll look at this during our tour and people can draw their own conclusions.
Could Patty make a prior list of the kinds of trees which, in your opinion, and I really respect your knowledge on this, you consider as invasives, and just tick off the ones which we should be looking at, and then we can compare them with the 2013 plan and see whether they've really increased or not.
Weed warriors typically, Montgomery County weed warriors don't deal with invasive trees.
It's undergrowth.
It's undergrowth. It's
It's the
shrubs.
vines. You
So
know, it's
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 That's
honeysuckle,
right.
you
it's
know, it's
Japanese
the wine berries, et cetera, et
Japanese
cetera.
pokeweed. It's, you know, there are many, and bamboo certainly, which there's terrible bamboo in the park that we've tried to deal with in the past. I can tell you the history, but we don't deal with trees. But Ailanthus is definitely, you know, we know it's invasive.
So if I may, this is a wonderful conversation and in the heart of what this committee should address. Mike mentioned earlier bamboo. There are outgrowths of bamboo in the park that we definitely want to try to extricate. But if you will, think of the stand of bamboo down at the bottom of Essex Avenue. That is a very dense stand of bamboo. Should we go in there tomorrow and remove it all? Think about it. What's the benefit and the risk?
The
The
department,
neighbors down there really love that bamboo because it serves what benefit? It's a dense green screen and minimizes traffic noise. So here's a case where that stand of bamboo serves benefits that you just have to think hard before you go in there and rip it all out.
Okay, you know, what if we did this? What if we make this as part of the discussion for the walking meeting, but also maybe this to me, and you guys can disagree if you want, but it seems like a topic which would be suitable for setting up a subgroup among us of those who are knowledgeable and passionate about it to try to come up with a policy or a suggestion to the council for a policy.
Are you talking about, on the one hand, the Vinton Park, and on the other hand, the invasive plant management?
Well, I was actually just talking about the invasive plant management at this stage.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, I'm happy to volunteer, but I'd love to know whether there has been some attempt at defining what things we're going to look at. So if it's only undergrowth and we don't want to go beyond that, then I would feel that we do need to go beyond that. And so it depends on how we set ourselves up.
All right. Well, why don't we leave that as a discussion once I think to me it seems like we should do the walking tour first. And try to then identify a group of people who would like to focus on this issue. Does that seem like a good approach?
Sure, and let's see if there is anything, Patty, about how invasive species have been defined.
yep.
Um, all right. Any other comments or concerns about this?
Yeah, I mean, I may be jumping here, but I think in order to make sure that the rest of the town doesn't think that we're all of a sudden we're going to go on their property and say, you got to take out all this or all that. I mean, we're talking about going forward, right? I think we need to make that very clear that this is any plan that goes forward would, you know, houses that currently have whatever invasive species are urged to get rid of them, but they're grandfathered in. They're not going to be mandated to get rid of plants because people don't want that kind of invasion, to use a bad word, in their current lives. I think, I mean, going forward is a completely different matter, and there we have the opportunity to recommend, if not mandate, people using certain kinds of or not using certain kinds of invasives.
Yeah, I think if there is a policy adopted by the town around this, that would have to be clear. I don't think anybody's talking about that. And
But
it, as I think Robin explained at the beginning, it's really about landscaping plans on new homes. Because I can't imagine you can even control what people plant. once they're in the homes.
But it actually, I will say something on that. It's actually the state that's doing this, and what on English ivy, which is one that's been newly added to the banned plants. That was in 2024 legislation. They've only just added it this year to the list of banned plants, but they give a 2-year window for garden stores to carry English ivy before it's shut out of garden stores. But that's how they control people generally buying these things, is you can't get it in the stores anymore. Of course, they can go out of state and get it, and you can't do anything about that, but that's how it gets controlled.
Who wants English ivy? I want it out of my yard.
Okay. All right. Well, so I'm not sure we have a clear action plan on that, but I'm sort of punting it so that we do this walking meeting, and then maybe subsequent to that, figure out a smaller group who would like to focus on the invasive plant. But if, I think that's how I would approach it. But if people would prefer to set up that group today, I'm okay with doing that too.
No, I think the Vinton Park plan is a lot on our plates already, although the invasive species topic is of deep interest. But I do think that for the Vinton Park plan, we could make a little list of these are some of the points which are raised in the previous plan, and do we want to give a little bit of attention to them?
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with Anjali. I think that we have a lot on our plate with Vinton Park. And I've certainly have heard the group articulate how important that is to all of us, tackling that right away.
And Vinton
Okay.
Park really includes invasives. I mean, it is
Right.
where that issue comes up. So it's all included.
Okay.
Mary, I understand you have a burden of a bit to come up with something on this notion of a policy on landscape management plans for new builds. Perhaps it can be a fairly simple statement that the town of Somerset, in the case of new builds, encourages development of landscape plans that rely completely on native species. Here's a list of native species. And maybe we ease into this without prescribing too much in the near term about what new development landscape plans look like. I'm just sensing that you'd like to achieve something on this that represents some forward motion.
Well, I mean, thank you, Jeff. That's a very practical solution. I don't actually feel under that much pressure to have an immediate solution on this, but I do think that's not a terrible suggestion that we try to keep it simple in terms of what we're suggesting. I don't know how people would feel about a simple statement like that, or if you would rather that we looked at the issue more extensively before we try to come up with a statement.
I think we should look at it more extensively. For example, I suspect people want to have azaleas in their in landscaping, and azaleas is not a native plant. It's not an invasive plant. So, it is, something that if we just say native, I'm totally 100%, supportive of that, but I think there'll be a lot of objections, to certain plants. Daffodils, they're not native, and people like daffodils. So I think that we have to be careful with our language.
Yeah, and ornamental maples, which Jeff Slavin has a beautiful specimen of in his garden. Japanese cherries, especially the weeping cherries. I mean, these are landscaping trees all over the town already, which are not native.
When I reached out to the Parks Committee a while back, it was the intersection of non-native and invasive that got the specific green light for action.
Okay. All right. I think we're gonna continue the discussion then and have it as part of our walking meeting. And if we feel, I don't know, Robin, if you think that the council needs something on the landscaping plans sooner than that, um,
You can take a couple of months to do it.
yeah,
But by late fall should be fine.
okay, excellent. All right, that brings us to any other business.
I actually just wanted to recommend for as we're going forward that we have some structure, to the meetings in that, since this is a merger of two committees, which had two different visions and two different missions, that my first reaction when I saw this agenda was all about parks and, and issues like that. And it was not which are all part of the environment, I know, but there was some of the issues that the Environment Committee has been dealing with in the past having to do with getting solar on the town, garage and on the pool and things like that, are things that we've undertaken as part of the Environment Committee. So I don't want to necessarily, have dominate the agenda, but I would like to potentially have maybe a standing section, a standing, agenda item that, it's one is parks and invasives and the other one is environment. It could be nothing said on environment, but at least there'll be an expectation, it'll be discussed as part of the meeting. That's my recommendation.
Um, I don't have any problem having that as a standing point. Um, I'm not sure. I mean, we're sort of dealing with issues as they come up either from the committee or the town or the council. Um, but we can certainly put that as a place marker in the agenda.
And that's all I'm asking and suggesting. Just that,
Okay.
if people want to bring stuff up, if people want to have points or if there's a thought someone has, at least there's a parking lot spot for that. It's such that we can, and people want to, for example, I just want to report on one thing about that the Environment Committee did able to do in the last year was we proposed and got the town to agree, and we worked with the pool committee to have composting at the pool. And so at this point, there is a composting, bucket, whatever you want to call it, that's near the kitchen at the underneath cover. But I've talked to the pool management, and people are using it. So so far it is, reasonably successful. And so that is something I just want to able to report that our initiative and that we did and we tested out last fall has been working this summer. And the town's pool staff, they have no problem with incorporating, taking out the compost at the same time they're taking out all the rest of the trash. It's no additional work on their part. So
Okay.
it was a big success.
All right. Well, thank you for reporting
There's
back on
just
that.
one final point, if we're talking about agendas, is that I hope parks can include, as Kelly Swain raised also, the idea of, the little plantings around, for example, the entrance and exit, the management of the lot between Dorset Avenue and Cumberland Avenue. It seems to me that ever since the contractor of this space was changed about a year and a half or 2 years ago, there's been a huge dwindling of this, and a lot of very pretty flowering plants have actually been removed. It seems that the people who are doing it don't know too much about it, and maybe it needs to be more thoughtfully done.
Okay. That sounds like that is covered, by the way, under our terms of reference. I know that for sure. And it sounds like something that we should put on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's one of the things that when you look at the entrance to Somerset from Wisconsin, it's one thing, and you look at the entrance from both Greystone and here on Little Falls, it's just not, I mean, compared to Kenwood, I mean, we look bush, it needs help. And so for whatever reason, it needs to be improved. So I'm definitely thinking that's something that I would like to work on for sure.
And even the entrance from Wisconsin has really dwindled over the last 2 years since the Cabrera company left.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mary, I wanted to bring something else to your attention, and David, thank you for bringing up the environmental side of things. Recently, with the bad air quality that we had from the forest fires in Canada, I think the town needs to have a better policy on what air quality index we're looking at when we're determining whether activities in town can go forward or not. So I'm wondering if that's something that we can discuss as a committee, and also even potentially whether the town needs to have its own air quality index reader rather than following Rockville's.
Okay, excellent. We'll put that on the agenda as well. Any other comments? Sounds like we have quite a few things to cover. All right, so I don't know if we can set the date for this walking meeting. I'm gonna, at this point, I think, try to say we'll do it in the first half of September. Is everybody okay with that?
Towards the latter part of the first half,
Okay.
because a lot of people are off for Labor Day anyway. I
If you
think
could do
Labor
it
Day is quite
after
late.
Rosh Hashanah, that would be great,
Okay.
because things get busy around Rosh Hashanah. That's September 13th.
That's a
I
good
think.
point.
Between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is a good time. We'll be repenting.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think we've covered the agenda and we have a plan for the next step. Justin, we will put up some sort of concise minutes in addition to the video recording, right?
Yeah, that sounds
Okay.
good. Just kind of like action items and stuff like that. Doesn't have to be
Yeah.
super detailed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, with that, I just want to say thanks again to everybody. It's been a pleasure. I learned a lot. And I thank you all for your time. And I'm sorry my dog is going crazy back here, but I look forward to seeing you in September.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
Meeting. Thanks,
Thank
Nancy.
you very much,
Good.
Yeah.
Mary.
Thanks all.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.